very still and quiet. I look up every now and again, and I realize I'm the only one moving. So I'm like, oops. And so, it's nice to have that 30 minutes just to sit. That's something that really came over me some years ago, when I realized, oh, for this period of time, there's nothing to do. I can just sit. Nothing to take care of, nothing that really needs to be accomplished, and then you can really take a load off, even for just that 30 minutes, that amount of time. Nothing that needs to be resolved or solved, just the action of sitting meditation. There's a translation of just sitting meditation in a Zen school from China, which roughly translated is being completely and only involved in the art of sitting. Which sounds quite straightforward and plain on the face of it, but for most of us in meditation, being completely and only involved in sitting is quite difficult, because we may find ourselves being at least partially involved in conspiring in our minds or thinking about different things, or weighing this experience against another experience. Because our brains, the way that they function, they take care of a lot of things which are dark to us, taking care of running the body and the mind, and a lot of it, of course, is unseen, but it's still being taken care of. But then there's the realm of the seen and the experienced. What's being seen and experienced on what can be perceived as the outside, and then what is seen and experienced on the inside. And so as we create a quiet and still environment externally, like here in the sitting space, it's set up to be a place of reflection, and is conducive to this practice. So there's very little going on in the room, and that may be so for those joining us on Zoom too. Probably a quiet time, a quiet room, and so then the focus naturally may move to what is being experienced internally, and so that usually involves, well, there's some information there coming from the body. If we sit a long time, we may be quite uncomfortable, and that can take up some of the bandwidth of experience. But mostly meditation is a lot of the work of Dharma practice and meditation, if you can call it work, sometimes it feels like work, is really correcting a relationship to thinking, mind, and self-identity. And I say correcting because in its original context, thinking, mind, and self-identity flows naturally, can be experienced flowing naturally. But in our actual experience of our day-to-day, as a human being, we tend to be turned around and caught often by objects of mind and attachment and aversion. The title for today's talk was Navigating Our Human Experience. You could have said navigating my human experience. We're all doing that, but it really is a collective effort, and as a human being, we're all navigating our human experience. That's for sure, right? We're here. It's happening, and it's our human experience in the sense that we are clearly not separated from one another, whether here physically in this space, whether by joining online, but of course in our social sphere of activity. Humans tend to be social creatures after all. And it's the human experience is a shared human experience. But inherent within that, of course, unfortunately, is a lot of difficulty and strife too. So if we look back to the historical founder of the Dharma tradition or meditation practice is, represented here. We have the Buddha sitting quite patiently behind me. Whether I speak well or not, he remains unfazed, right? Just content to sit. Wooden Buddhas are good at sitting. They sit 24/7, 365. Right? So that's a representation of a Buddha in a different form. How does a Buddha appear in a living, breathing human form? Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, was a regular person, like each one of us is a regular person. His circumstances were such that he was perhaps elevated in terms of social status, or he was born into a certain conditions in which he was one of the ruling elite of the day. However, this is approximately 5th century BCE India, so probably not the lap of luxury, but by the standards of the day and the conditions of the day, quite fortunate circumstances. But from a very early age, in navigating his own human condition, he was driven by these the questions and the nagging sense of what is this life all about, and what is the meaning? And these core questions of why are we subject to old age, sickness, and death? What is the point and the meaning of appearing as a human being? After all, for each one of us, I don't remember auditioning for this role that I find myself in. Right? I think that's true for all of us, unless you have that, someone puts a hand up in the back and says, no, I remember where, in a former lifetime. But we appear in this world due to causes and conditions which are unquantifiable. The meetings of people and the strands of karma, which are just multitudinous, can never be mapped. And one day we appear in this world as this living process of a human being. And being a human being, then we directly experience one way or another, we come to know the fact of impermanence. That all things that appear as a form that can be seen or experienced have their time, appear, and then disappear. Right? Sometimes we'll say, return to the source. We'll see that in Dharma writings. But when you look for the source, you can't find it. It can't be found. But what we appear from, or disappear to, already immediately there we fall into a conceptual realm where we can picture emerging from something and disappearing into something. But in our realm of experience, it's always been this experience, but an unbroken experience from when we appeared, when we first recognized, and then it's been an unbroken chain of experience, causal chain of experience up until this point now. And we're always somewhere, as human beings, the Buddha pointed out, we're subject to attachment and aversion. It's a sort of Buddhism 101, that we like the things that we like, and we move towards better things and to try to move towards ease. And we move away from difficulty and try to avoid pain. Right? We have things that we are attached to, and then things that we are averse to. And that's a practice of a human being. And although it was someone like the Buddha a couple of thousand years ago, very different circumstances to these now. We have different conditions and circumstances to deal with. And yet still more in common than there are differences. Whatever era a human being is born into, there's a commonality. There's an arc of experience which is broadly similar. there are obviously some differences. But I think undoubtedly we could say that in our day and age, the world seems to have sped up considerably. Right? Things are moving faster, and things seem more perhaps busy or chaotic than ever. There's a documentary, I think is it Werner Herzog, the German documentarian, makes good movies, called Cave of Forgotten Dreams. Really good documentary if you ever come across it. It's about the Chauvet caves in southern France, where they discovered these ancient cave paintings from, I think, about 30,000 years ago. Our forebears from 30,000 years ago. So it's beautiful artwork that was preserved because there was a kind of a rock face collapsed and just sealed it in, and it was discovered some decades ago. And in that cave, there's all of these beautiful depictions of bison and ibex, things that have gone extinct since, and things that still, other creatures that still walk around today. These beautiful depictions, marvelous artwork. And then in one section there are handprints. Where you take these handprints and they would blow red ochre at their hand, and then create the silhouette of a hand on the wall. And there's one there where somebody's put their hand and done this, and someone else. And then there's a child's print that's near these other ones, where a child did it. And when they measure these, there was 5,000 years between when the first person and the second person put their handprint on the wall. It's like 5,000 years of difference. And you can imagine that the generations that came, and unnamed generations of people with untold stories are not remembered now. It came and went for all of those generations, and nothing really changed. Nobody invented the iPhone in that 5,000 years. Right? Nobody invented social media either. So probably, and I'm not, it was a good thing. Hard to say, right? They had their own challenges. And yet these people have lived and breathed for all of these generations, and we come up to this point now in this fast-paced, busy life that we live in. And quite naturally, we can be really agitated by the condition of the world. In fact, if we're not agitated by the present condition of the world, we're not taking any. We're in avoidance because the world is difficult, and there's so much suffering in the world. There always has been. What a shame! What a shame! It feels so unnecessary and unfortunate. And amidst all of this, this busyness and change, how do we find our peace? How do we cultivate peace and well-being and freedom? Some of the promise of the Dharma tradition and the Buddha's realization. But in our practice when we come to our practice of meditation, we're in a world of ceaseless change, and that's what we experience: things coming and going. And yet, the other side of that, if we turn that over, we can also see that throughout all of these generations and thousands and even millions of years of history, it's always been exactly this, and that there is something unchanging that has never changed since the Buddha or the caves of Chauvet or long before. It's always been irrevocably and completely this experience. So the forms change, including our very bodies, as we've noticed, right? Everything is always churning and changing. And if we're attached and immersed and blinded by that change and only involved in that, then that change tends to run us. We're always living in reaction to constant change. So at the heart, our practice of still sitting and meditation is to come to better realize, or even to deeply realize, what is unchanging and what is unmoving. to do so, and for a reason, not as some intellectual exercise or a way to escape the world, but to find refuge in the midst of the changing world. To be able to come back always to a still point amidst all of the change. It's kind of like navigating our human experience. As we're going forward, quite naturally we're making plans. We have goals. We have a destination in mind usually. Right? That can be quite an everyday destination. Like maybe tomorrow I need to go out and buy milk, maybe the destination. Or longer, or what's more important goals long term. And we navigate towards those goals. But we're always navigating in the immediacy of here now, in this direct experience now. And making adjustments as we go. Now, because we're always making these adjustments, of course, when we come to sitting practice, then there's this tendency to continue to navigate and to steer and to make adjustments in our experience. We may feel like I'm thinking too much, or I'm not concentrated enough, or whatever. We may have something that's really on our mind, some unresolved argument that happened this morning, or a worry about something that's coming up later this week. So on a human level, there is always ceaseless content. There are a couple of ways to approach this. We can remove a lot of the content. That's what the Buddha did, after all. He left behind a kingdom, a family, many, busy circumstances, and left and went alone into the forests of northern India and just practiced and really became a great minimalist, right? Reduced his food intake and became involved in asceticism in a way to reduce content. It said that when the Buddha was quite elderly, he was asked about who would succeed him by Ananda, and he said to Ananda, "There's no need. There's no need for a successor. There won't be another Buddha. There's no need. It's not about that, empowering some person to be the great teacher." He said, "I have already proclaimed or unveiled the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. If you practice those things, then you too will be a Buddha. You will gain liberation." Right? So he laid out a way to let go of unnecessary suffering. But that way involves a lot of voluntary restriction. It involves not doing a lot of stuff and not being involved in a lot of things. And so quite a lot of content reduction. We do the same thing at retreat. All right, we're going to not do displacement activities or even entertainment activities. We're going to make things very simple and reduce content in order that we can really pare down and come back to our core experience. But in the midst of we're not always certainly on retreat, and for most of us here have not decided to diligently follow the Eightfold Path of voluntary restriction and a way of being. There may be aspects of it, of course, which we are practicing. But those aspects that we're practicing also have to dovetail and conform to living a busy, everyday life in the world. So it's a different practice for each one of us. We're practicing in different conditions now. And yet the goal is the same. How do I reduce difficulty, frustration, or dukkha, dissatisfactoriness and suffering? What can I let go of? And how do I turn to refuge, freedom, and liberation? If it only just in our own mind. How is that so? And whether we're very busy or the content has been reduced, this can be realized very deeply in just one session of meditation, even. Just a moment of authentic practice. But it requires it really requires a great shift or a leap, or whatever way that we look like this. The essential art of this meditation is to cease involvement with the content that is being experienced, or cease disturbing the content that's being experienced. What I mean by that, direct experience of when we sit, however the mind is arranged, busy or quiet, whatever the problems of the day are, they have to be invited in to be here. They're here already. Invite them in, allow everything to be as it is, but then don't involve, don't hold onto, don't grab, and don't push away. Like Shunryu Suzuki's wonderful line, when thoughts come into the mind, allow them, but don't serve them tea. That's a very elegant way to put it. Don't serve your thoughts tea, and then let's have a catch-up. But it tends to be that it's difficult to do. But that involvement with our own thought, that is the identity center that we construct as a human being. That is the software, the navigation system we have for exploring reality. And it's wonderfully effective. Right? It's brilliantly effective at exploring reality, but it has a major downside. The major downside is the creation of a separate, distinct, fixed, enduring self that is different than others and stands apart from the world. That's the flaw in that system. Right? Whether we come at it from Buddhism, from the Theravadan standpoint, or we come at it from a Zen standpoint, it challenges this fixed identity of me and says, wait, if we actually take a real good look at what is going on here, and that, again, that's what sitting is. It's take a really good look at the way things are, actually. Not from a distance, not through an intellectual lens, but experientially. What is this experientially? Right? Each one of us is not the same person as we were yesterday. On a cellular level, that's true. Right? We're different. We're broadly the same, and there is a continuation that goes forward. But at the heart of it, when you really look, each one of us is unfolding as a process. An unfolding process rather than a separate thing. Even our identity, if you look into our identity is a creation in our mind, in the brain, right? Who I am, the name our parents gave us, who I am in relationship to my partner or spouse or friends or family. And you can see that there is there's a construction of self, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. That is what part of the human condition. But if we look deeply into it, there's no there. There's not something at the bottom which can be named, fixed and described. But rather we're living in this unfolding process. And if we're not living separately from one another and separate from the world, then we are actually a part of the whole cosmological unfolding process. Which sounds a little bit, trippy. But it's so. It's like the whole world, not just this, this place, Belmont Shore, Long Beach, California, continental US, the Earth, the solar system, the local galaxy, the Milky Way, and peel out and out and out and out. And this whole, without a gap, without a pause, the whole experience of the universe is constantly unfolding itself as this, and always has. And we find ourselves slap bang in the middle of it. But maybe we don't find ourselves in the middle of it. If we look for the self, you can't find the self. You can find a description of self, and we can say some things about it, But that is not fixed, it's always unchanging. So rather than finding ourselves at the center of things, perhaps we could say that the world is experiencing itself through us. And that's very challenging to the orthodoxy of being a human being. You're just like, hold on a minute, back up. Right? There's me, I just came here for a bit of meditation on a Sunday afternoon. What's going on? And yet, this is, to see into this is to find, is curiously, and a wonderful irony, is to discover peace and freedom and refuge within that. The radical experience and acceptance of things as they are, of each one of us as we are, and each one of you as you are. The whole world as it is, all at once, seen and experienced and allowed. As a human being, that's difficult for us because we love to make distinctions. We love to chop things up and say, well, this is fine, but I can accept all of this, but not this. And as a human being, we've usually got some not this involved. Right? But a difference between Siddhartha Gautama, he lived a conditional life, looking for something and living a conditional reality, looking for something, trying to get away from something else. But the person represented on the altar here as the Buddha, the thus come one, the one who is awake, is no longer looking for something or to be someone, to get away from something or come towards something. But as one who has arrived at this place here unconditionally, with no conditionality. But that non-conditionality can be experienced and practiced in one moment of sitting and in the midst of our everyday life. It's the allowing, it's being the clear lens, or the clear window that can experience things as they are. Usually there's a lot of me that wants to no, I'm looking through the window. Right? But if the me is set aside, it can just be set aside, which is a wonderful rest. Again, it's like when you sit, just set me aside. And that's awkward in language, like how does one set me aside? But me is always picking and choosing. Me is always finding some kind of issue. Me likes things, me don't like things. Right? But the Buddha has no distinction around good or bad, like and dislike. It's a manifestation of being thus, in accord with all things as they are, without distinction, all at once. Breathing in and breathing out. And even you're not breathing in or breathing out. I'm not breathing in and breathing out. If it was up to me to do that, I would forget and collapse. Because I would forget to breathe in and out. That sounds like work. Even that's being done for us. It's being done. Everything is already is unfolding, is happening. There's very little to do. It really is, though. I mean, each one of us is I speak for myself, a terrible micromanager of reality. Constantly got the hands navigating. Let me drive. Navigating, which way is it? Just steering, just whoa. Turns out you could sort of relax, don't grip the wheel so tight. Especially in meditation, take your hands off the wheel. This thing is driving itself. Your job is just to watch and experience. But that nourishes the spirit. The heart mind that each one of us is appreciates and enjoys the practice of still sitting. We may not enjoy our meditation, but that's fine. We get there, we do it whether we like it or not. That's the discipline of practice. But it is undoubtedly a great investment in the health of the body-mind to return and align with the fullness of reality. It's coming home. It's return. Every time that you sit, you return home to the unknowable basis, to the unknown basis that you emerged as, and that we've been living all these years. No one can say what it is, what it means, where it comes from, where it goes, whether there is any coming and going. Turns out we know very little. And that's fine. As human beings, we love to collect, we love to know. But most of knowing is involved in trying to arrange safety. You get something that you know, and then you got that going for you. I know this now, and we can try and hold on to something. And not knowing can naturally be a scary proposition. Not knowing, well, I don't know. You know, it could turn out good, it could turn out bad. But Dharma practice is, at its heart, the plunging into not knowing. You know, being in the midst of not knowing, but also being curious and being in the midst of finding out, experiencing and even enjoying at the same time. So we can look at meditation in this sense as, as like a healthy pit stop. Right, where we pull the car in, it's going round and round and round and round, and it's just like, hold on, time to come in, sit down, stop. I think that's an essential activity for human beings. Essential activity. To stop. Stop all movement. Physically and internally too. Now that doesn't mean stopping internal movement that you need to have an empty mind, not thinking. That's not the stopping. Your mind can be racing 1,000,000 miles an hour and you can still be at peace and stop. It just means have no regard for whether it's running at 1,000,000 miles an hour or not. But openly allow, accept, and be in touch with things as they are. Then you learn what it is to sit like this, which is the full embrace and allowing of this world as it is. Now you say something like that, of this world as it is. Well, hold on, what about? What about? And as human beings, yeah, we care, we're human, and we want to do something about suffering. But at its root, all of the human doing is what causes the suffering. There's intrinsically nothing wrong with the world. It's everyone's misguided efforts to fix it that screws it up. It's an unfortunate truth. And it's not mine, I stole that from a Tao Te Ching. And we're so apt to that as human beings, to buy into the way to fix, for what needs to be done, what needs to be corrected. But unfortunately, everybody's got a different idea. Now, what also that comes out of concerted practice is knowing when to act, how much to say, what, more skillful decisions and timing. Right? So you're not driving and holding on the wheel all of the time, but you're aware and you watch as things go forward and unfold, and then at the right time and the right place you can say, turn left, when you need to turn left. Meditation brings that piece forward and brings that into realization, makes it apparent that you can dwell as a present human being. That's a wonderful thing. Maybe that's what some of the people of yesteryear and thousands of years ago maybe had something going for them that we find difficult, which is just to be a person of presence. Alive, awake, and aware now. In the world that competes for our attention and our clicks and tries to pull us into narratives, then it's work for us to emancipate ourselves from that and to stay awake, present, and alive now. But that is our natural condition. And when we do so, we're here for those around us. And we're here for the broader world around us too. But it takes practice. We have to push back in that sense against a world that just wants to run us and keep us busy. At the heart of it, Dharma traditions reclaiming both responsibility and agency. Instead of being run by conditioning and circumstances, you realize and rediscover the still point at the center that is always here. And then you can have more agency, space, and choice about how to respond. So that shift is from conditioned reactivity to spacious responsiveness. How to respond in a way which moves us away from unnecessary frustration and dukkha and suffering toward benefit, connection, all the good stuff.